All right, so G2 have been on a bit of a tear recently with this, like, pretty strong, I'd say, understanding of the meta that they've gone at this point. They've got quite the stranglehold, and they've been able to manhandle basically every stage of draft and how the different possibilities, and the different chains of draft that could possibly happen, and what answers they have for each of them, right? And I think that's been one of the strengths of their roster over the years, just that constant ability to be able to really understand what's been happening and be adaptable in that sense. So that's another one in this case, and they've continued to do so with their tech pick here. So you can see in this first opener against Heretics, their X factor, let's say, is the Gwen ban on 2 in first phase. So a lot of teams are not usually down to do this unless they have a different plan in mind, because if you're a team on blue side in this meta, you're going to want to take B1 Gwen basically every time if it's open. But in the case where in a way it's kind of constricting, right? Because if you're forced into a B1 Gwen draft, right, great, you get a Gwen, you're happy, but you have a player like Broken Blade, so flexible. Is it really that necessary in order to force yourself into that environment and kind of just take that cash out? Oh, arguably yes or no, right? So that's why they end up going for something else. Team Heretics actually catch onto this, so they actually do read into this and then respond with an Azir ban. Because the mindset here, it's a bit of a pre-ban. So whatever Heretics are thinking, G2 don't want to pair, let's say, Ezreal Azir or Varus Azir, right? They could take both on the 1-2, but they had different plans in mind. And the handshake is generally fine as long as one team doesn't necessarily get it. They could also just be really scared of the Caps Azir. Totally reasonable, right? And then the draft kind of ends up playing itself out a little bit. So after the G2 go for the B1 Varus, Team Heretics establish the dynamic of the draft, going for Zyra Corki, right? So they're going for a very heavy, like, sort of poke comp. The problem with this is that they invest a lot of their resources early on, basically identifying what their comp's about to do off the 1-2, and it gives G2 a pretty much free opener or free response opener into the Zyra, because they're very much known for their Mundo pick. So they go Mundo Gnar on 2-3, they go for a bit of a mismatch, but on 4-5 you have support, and I believe you're missing top lane. So realistically, there's not too many options you could go for, so they have a general idea of what this Team Heretics comp is going to do. And G2, they got pretty solid matchups all around so far, and their main cash out is the Mundo into Zyra. So because of this, every time they go for this route, when they go for the Mundo route into the Zyra response, Team Heretics could sign up for it, right? Instead, they what ends up happening is that it actually reverses the matchup such that Zyra has to play more aggressive and kind of like up the pace of the game, right? So because of this, they end up going Camille into Gnar on 4-5, or R4 rather, in order to pace up. But I don't think it's enough, because G2 just have a lot of answers they can do in order to get that counter pick out to mid and then round themselves off and cause enough chaos, right? It's not like G2's playing the draft extremely spicy. It's more so they're just setting up their selves for success, relatively speaking, and they're just capitalizing off the free, like, let's say, meta bailout that they give themselves with this Mundo pick, right? As it is important to not only equally have your answers to what's good in draft, but also be flexible and understand like your unique way of winning in draft, and G2 have basically banked on it in this game. And I think teams have not really figured that out yet, because Zyra opener is a very, very common one, and it allows teams to be challenged a lot more. But I think this G2 Mundo response is something that a lot of teams have been struggling with. So we move on to the second layer, and basically on red side, you can see that G2 just really don't like dealing with Gwen. They end up basically just insta-banning it, auto-banning it, because they're just not willing to deal with it no matter what. Team Heretics are allergic to the Azir as well. They just do not want to deal with it, and they go for a Skarner opener this time. So this is basically the inverse of the first game with the Zyra opener, where basically you're there daring G2 again to go for another spicy matchup. And in this case, they go for a relatively standard one with the Iron Ashe. Ashe has fallen down like quite a bit in terms of her nerfs, and a lot of teams, she's not nearly had the same level of dominance as she had before, but I think she's a little overvalued, let's put it this way. But in spite of that, her champion identity is still there, and I think in the case of G2, they're still willing to kind of go for that and gain that early laning power, right? So with that in mind, Heretics respond with basically almost a non-answer. They go MF, which is a pretty standard matchup into the Ashe. and not much relatively happens. Both teams are going relatively safe. I haven't seen many teams like mismatch styles where it's like forward versus backwards. Like, also note that like Vi slipped through this entire draft as well. This is most likely because they've established that it was established off the B1 Skarner, right? So that makes sense. If you go Vi into this and go mismatch, the Team Heretics could just go full backwards, and it's really hard for them to go through. So that's why you're seeing a lot of the the mismatch of styles is not very common. You usually go the same style both ways, or you go crazy both ways, right? You can see that as G2 kind of realize that, or Team Heretics kind of realize again that they might get outscaled with against a draft like this. They end up pacing up and go for an all-in aggressive sort of pick on 4-5, and then basically when G2 catch onto this R5 Renekton starts to make more sense. You're like, on paper, you're like, it's kind of weird because Renekton's not a champ that you would normally do that with, of course, right? He's more of like a B1 type of champion, but in this case, the value add that you're looking for from a champion is to just ensure and to curb this laning phase so that G2 can have smooth sailing into the later stages of the game, right? They're not pressed to actually really cause too much to happen in this game because that's all on Heretics, right? So because of that, they go Renekton here. It's not because it's an investment counter by any means. It's just because they want to be able to curb this and secure themselves another good early game. So 2 games off the back of like outscaling jungle matchups. This is how they were able to really identify and play through their unique wins. And I think this is another unique way of how teams are answering the meta. So hopefully that makes sense to you guys. And I'll see you in the next one.